Hey, Ed here from Precision Gun Reviews, and today I'm taking a look at the Glock 26 Gen 5. This is Glock's newest offering, the 5th generation of pistols, and it comes with a few obvious changes and a whole host of unnoticeable changes unless you really take the time to either research it or look inside the gun yourself. And I'm going to try to be thorough and run down as much as I can here, particularly because it's a Glock and those of you who are familiar with the firearm and the history of it will want to know a little bit more than we might typically talk about. So first of all, the simple facts are it's a polymer-framed striker-fired pistol. It is a subcompact double stack that holds 10 rounds in its flush-fit magazine. It's 6.42 inches long. It is 4.17 inches tall, and it is 1.3 inches wide at the slide locks. It's about 1.1 at the widest part of the frame, and about 1.0 just on the slide itself. The barrel is 3.43 inches long, and it's a polygonal rifled barrel, but it's what Glock calls their new Glock Marksman barrel. This is the GMB barrel, and they say it has hexagonal rifling. The gun comes with 3 magazines. I just wanted to have this here. I'm going to put this away. And one thing about this new barrel, aside from its improved hexagonal rifling, is this crown. There's a improved crown on the front of the barrel, so you might not have to worry as much about damaging the muzzle end of your barrel. The gun is a 21.69 ounce firearm with the magazine unloaded, which is down very slightly from the previous generation, which might have something to do with internals or removing some of the frame material. And speaking of the frame, we have the same Glock rough textured frame, except this time we're missing the front bump that makes 2 finger grooves on the front of the Glock Gen 4, and we now have this straight-faced front strap, which I think is an incredible improvement and makes the gun much more comfortable. It's amazing how one simple thing really affects how you feel about a gun. It also comes with 4 of these back straps. Now these are 2 sizes, medium and large, and in each size there's a beaver tail and a non-beaver tail version. Honestly, I don't care because I like it just like that. As Glock has been removing material from the grip of their gun, I think it has been improved progressively from Gen 3 to Gen 4 to Gen 5. I feel like this is the best of the Glock grips. Now, I did say it comes with 10+1 magazines, and these are Glock's standard polymer encased mags. They now have an orange follower for easy recognition of an empty firearm. The magwell is beveled here, flared a little. The mags don't necessarily shoot out, but they do come out just fine. This is an unloaded gun. There's no magazine safety, and the magazine release is reversible. There's no additional magazine release. You just take the one that's there and flip it to the other side. The look of the Glock is very plain, very simple. It's about function and not really aesthetics, although I do like the new finish on the slide. This is their nDLC coating. That is a diamond-like carbon process, and I believe the N, it's somewhat ambiguous, but I believe it means that this was a nitriding combined with the DLC finish, which you'll see is blacker and picks up fingerprints. Let's see. There you go. You probably got a fingerprint right there really easily. Now, the point of the DLC coating is to improve hardness, and that's why it's diamond-like, and that should prevent scratches and wear. And apparently the diamond-like coating is also intended to reduce corrosion, increase corrosion resistance. It still has the same rear serrations, no front serrations, and these, they're fine. This finish actually, to me, feels a little bit slicker than previous finishes on Glocks, so the grip is not as good as it once was, and these serrations are not the best, but they serve their purpose. I mean, I don't generally rack the slide like this. I come over the top. Related to racking the slide, this slide lock is now an ambidextrous control, and it's functional even offhand. So that's really nice. It's a truly ambidextrous slide release. And we'll get to more changes that have to do with that slide release in a moment. I think the addition of that ambidextrous slide release has helped encourage Glock to make a number of changes that addressed some points that could have been improved. The extractor here is the same external extractor that serves as a loaded chamber indicator. It will protrude from the frame when a round is in the chamber. There is no Picatinny rail. There never has been on the Glock 26. There is a beveled front end of the slide, which actually has always been on the 26, and the frame matches the bevel. A lot of people were complaining about that. Our trigger guard is still squared, thick, and not as roomy as some other firearms. That never bothers me. The trigger itself is updated physically. It does not have the serrations that used to be on the front of the trigger. It's a smooth face trigger with the safe action dingus there. I think it's flatter. It doesn't have that sort of pointy angle pointing toward the front of the gun, and I find it easier to control. And there are a lot of other changes that have to do with that trigger. But for now, we'll say it's a 5.8 pound trigger, and it pulls just very similarly to previous Glocks. People say that it's improved, and there's evidence inside the gun to believe that it's improved, although it's kind of hard to tell. So this first bit of take up at the beginning of your trigger pull is pretty standard, normal, smooth, nothing gritty there. There's, I mean, a little bit of resistance, but not terrible. It doesn't hang up anywhere. There's a very defined wall, as is typically on Glock pistols. You pull through a little bit of stacking here, little creep, and then the trigger breaks. Not much over travel. Comes back to a defined reset. It actually pushes out a little bit there at the last stage of that reset. Puts you right back at that wall. So the trigger pull, once you're here at this wall, just breaks pretty easily. You have that little bit of play, and that's, you have to apply that 5.8 pounds of pressure before the break, and the trigger stays in the rear position when you're done. So Glock lists this as a 4.9-inch trigger travel, and that's just numbers. You can see what it is here. So one thing we skipped over here were the sights, and that's because I didn't want to complain about them like I normally do on Glock sights. So the Glock 26 normally comes with the classic U-dot sights, the polymer sights that come on every Glock. But this time I opted to go with these steel 3-dot sights, which are night sights, visible very easily in both daytime light and at night. And I just wanted to give a look at something different, something other than the Glock U-dot sights. Also, I wanted to shoot with these 3-dot sights instead of those U-dot sights because I hate them. Anyway, we can move on now to takedown, which is the same old Glock takedown. Pull it back just a little bit. Off comes the slide, and we're left with the frame, the slide, and this dual captive recoil spring on polymer guide rod, our barrel, which, as I stated, is the new Glock match barrel. And there are a few differences here inside the frame. We'll get to the frame itself, but first we'll look at the slide. We have a Glock 43 styled striker safety plunger. This is sort of rounded instead of the flat plunger that was on previous generations of Glocks, and this is supposed to make the activation of that via this portion of the trigger bar it's supposed to make it smoother so that it smooths up the trigger pull. Also in the slide, we can look at this firing pin. So the firing pin is a pretty important aspect of the gun, and they have switched from their previous rectangular shaped pin to a teardrop shape. And this is closer to being just fully round, and that is a physically more robust design. It should stand up to greater abuse and should be longer lasting. So that's essentially the differences in the slide, aside from the coatings and stuff. Now we get into the frame, and this isn't stuff that you can necessarily see, but we can see that we have this ambidextrous slide lock, and because of adding this new material inside the frame, there have been some other changes that have been done to accommodate that, and also to just incrementally improve the performance and durability of the components inside the firearm. So for the most part, you have completely revamped. I mean, the differences are minor, and you'd have to look at pieces side by side unless you're very familiar with the internals of the Glock. But you have a revamped trigger system with updated springs, as well as the trigger bar, the connector, and some other springs like the slide lock spring itself, which has changed from a leaf spring to a coil spring for greater durability. And also for greater durability, we have the hookless trigger spring, which used to be one of the more common Glock failures, are the hooks on that trigger spring. And all of these updates sort of combine to just improve the internals of the firearm a little bit incrementally. So I would say that the expected result of these changes is that the internals will see fewer failures over the long term and over thousands and thousands of rounds. Otherwise, you have what looks like much the same internal mechanism as it has always been. Still have the trigger releasing when you're pressing down on that safe action, kind of going on its own, releasing the sear, but it's all the same stuff, just better. We have our small rails here, these tabs to run the slide on. And one other thing that I'm not entirely sure of, I know that the Glock 17 and 19 now have matching locking lug styles, and I don't know if there was a change in the locking lugs and the locking block of the 26, but there is a possibility that this is now slightly different, this lockup, that I haven't been able to check myself. It would be great if someone in the comments could mention that. Otherwise, we also have, speaking of the locking block, we've gone to this single pin here. There were two pins in the Gen 4, and that was primarily to improve the resilience of this area of the firearm under the pressure of the 40 Smith & Wesson round. And it seems that Glock will no longer be producing the Gen 5s, at least, in 40 Smith & Wesson. This will be a 9mm frame only. Let's put this gun back together. Simply, one thing I really like about this particular firearm is the way that the rear of the recoil spring and guide rod assembly seats in a semicircle on the locking lugs there on the barrel. That's the Glock Gen 5. I believe I covered as much as I know. I'm not an expert, an in-depth expert on Glocks in particular, but I tried to be a little bit more thorough there. Now, as for shooting impressions, this has been fantastic. I owned a Glock 26 Gen 4 for a little while, and eventually sold it off in favor of the Smith & Wesson M&P Compact, which was a little bit bigger, but felt more comfortable in my hand. I shot it better, and I preferred to have it. Now, this time around, I find that the smallest incremental changes to the Glock 26 have really improved my opinions of the gun ergonomically. The removal of the finger grooves was big for me, and particularly something that people aren't mentioning a lot is this flat, smooth face trigger is a little bit more, I don't want to say comfortable, but it just provides for a better platform to push against and fire off shots without causing the sights to become misaligned under that pressure. Um, we also have this grip angle, which has been much maligned. However, in the 26, because it's so short, it doesn't bother me as much. And actually, in this case, having this hump pushes my hand, and the Glock 26 is a firearm that really feels like it locks into your hand. There's no play up here under the beaver tail area. You can get your hand right up in there and kind of lock it in. It just stays there. So it's a really good shooter in that regard, and especially now that this is flat and I can just drop my fingers on there. I do like the way that the mags are easy to seat and easy to just get them in there without having to struggle, without having to find it so much as in some other guns. As far as cosmetics are concerned, and I know some people like to talk about how things look, it's a very basic gun. It's not going to win any beauty contest, but this darker finish it makes it just seem a little bit more classy for some reason. I don't know. Not that that matters. I'm more of a practical kind of guy. But as far as reliability and shootability, it was very shootable. I have some targets. I can bring in some targets here. These are just some targets. And now, I don't know if you're familiar with my shooting or with your own shooting, because I feel like everyone does this, but I often shoot low and left. Who doesn't, right? I like to think you're all with me on that because it's really annoying. But, as you can see, this is a pretty good distribution. It is not specifically low and left in any of these cases. And one thing that I think is a characteristic of the Glock platform, and particularly this Glock 26, is that it's a gun that you will improve significantly with over time. So it's nice to see that with the tools available, what's in the gun, what's in my hand, I did not have that age-old problem. And this, I mean, I'm showing you just two targets. I shot a lot with the gun, and I find that I only become more and more accurate with this pistol, which shows a significant curve. Unlike some other firearms, I might shoot well with them to begin with and just kind of shoot well with them about the same level as long as I shoot them, or I might improve a very slight amount. But with the Glock, I have improved with it pretty significantly over time. So that's good to know. And I guess that's why people form their loyalties to this weapon. Now, in terms of reliability, it is still a Glock. I didn't have a single malfunction, not a fail to eject, not a fail to feed, not a failure of any kind. I'd never even had a failure to lock the slide back, which is something that, happens sometimes. Sometimes I get on top of a slide release, but not so with the Glock. I've never had that problem getting on top of that slide release and having it not lock back, which I like because it's always a little disconcerting when that happens. It does come with these 3 magazines, like I said, orange followers, 10-round mags. So I think you're getting a lot of bang for your buck here in terms of its reliability, its shootability, and just the very raw numbers of it, its size and weight and its capacity. For this size, 10 rounds, it's smaller than some other firearms, subcompact double stacks that are 10 rounds. Now, of course, this is the SIG P365 notwithstanding, which is my most anticipated firearm of the year. But if you've been paying attention, it hasn't quite worked out its teething issues, so I'm delaying on that. And if it continues to show issues that arise as time goes on and people experience the firearm at longer shooting intervals, then I think it's probably wise to hold on to something that will be reliable, will go bang, won't have pieces break on it and have issues in its function. And that's the Glock 26. This is going to be a reliable pistol. Now, for that reliability and shootability and all of those updates and the new features that are in some people's eyes very incremental and very minor and not a big deal to step up over the Gen 4. But if it's your first Glock, I would say this is the best Glock. So for all that, with this third magazine and these additional back straps, you're going to pay $6.99 MSRP, or you can find it at online retailers for anywhere from like $5.25, $5.50, something like that. It's a street price. So there you have it. The Glock 26, updated for its 5th generation, and I would argue so far it looks like its best iteration, and definitely a highly recommended firearm from me at Precision Gun Reviews. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really do appreciate it. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and please do subscribe if you like the videos and want to see more, and hit that little bell notification if you want to get notified when we have new videos. As always, thanks again for watching. You guys stay safe out there.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out and thanks to the gun store of Conway, South Carolina. They help us transfer in all of our firearms for review. And you should check out the gun store at scgunstore.com. They are a full-service guns and gear shop with an indoor range. They stock a wide selection of handguns, shotguns, suppressors, NFA items, tactical rifles, hunting rifles, and gear. They are fully stocked with all calibers of ammunition. They have gun safes, holsters, magazines. They do gunsmithing on site if you happen to be in the Conway, South Carolina area. Additionally, they hold training courses for those in the area. And they also offer a fully automatic experience in their gun range with an AR-15 or a Thompson 45 Tommy gun. They've got knives, they've got used firearms, parts, accessories, really just about anything you could think of related to firearms, home, and personal defense. I recommend you take a trip over to scgunstore.com, and no matter where you are, go to shop.scgunstore.com, where you can shop their inventory online and have it delivered right to your local FFL. That's the gun store of Conway, South Carolina. Thanks for making all the reviews that you see here on PGR possible.